Hello and welcome to the Careers in Sport webinar, and we are going to be talking about sports media. Now, the sports industry has a diverse range of careers and professions. There are so many things that you can choose to be. You could be a physiotherapist, nutritionist, a coach, maybe even a journalist. And what Careers in Sport do, they are an educational resource wanting to help people achieve their dream working in the sports industry. Did you know over 200,000 young people aged 14 to 18 will study a sports qualification? And careers in sport will not only help you decide if you want to have a career on the pitch or the track on the court, they also help you if you want to work behind the scenes as well. And as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about sports media today, a subject very close to my heart, but I am not alone in today's conversation. I've been joined by three other people who work in sports media. Firstly, I'd like to say hello to Marc Webber, who's the Senior Lecturer in Journalism at the University of Northampton. How's it going, Marc?
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Thanks for joining us. I'm also joined by Jordan Jarrett-Bryan, who is the sports journalist for Channel 4 News and TalkSport. How's it going, Jay?
Very, very well, Marie. How are you?
Good to see you, my friend. Good to see you. And last but certainly not least, the wonderful Suzanne Rack, who's the sports writer for The Guardian. How's it going, Susie?
Yeah, good, thanks. I hope you're good.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thanks for joining us today. And thanks for taking part in this webinar. I feel like we've got so much to talk about. But let's start right at the beginning with each of you about your career journey and why you decided to work in sports media. Let's start with you, Marc.
I've just been fascinated by sport. It comes from a love of watching it, I think. Growing up watching cricket at Glamorgan because I'm from South Wales. I come from a town called Bridgend, so I'm never going to say whether I'm a Swansea City fan or a Cardiff City fan. I'm right down the middle. But it came from a love of watching the sport and wanting to tell stories as well at school. I always wanted to write and things like that. So that followed through when I did when I was about 15 or 16, that it was something I knew I wanted to do. So I joined my local hospital radio station and started working on there. Then I started working on reporting on sport for my commercial radio station in Cardiff. Went on to do a degree in broadcast journalism. And since then, I've worked my way through. Some people, I'm here wearing a University of Northampton hat today. But some people might also recognise me because I work for Final Score on BBC One and do some match report for 5 Live as well. So I've had a very good life, and it's absolutely, as I probably said on Twitter, the best job in showbiz.
Oh, I like that. The best job in showbiz. Jordan, for you, you've had a wide-ranging career. You're not just working as a sports reporter, but you also work as a producer as well, a content creator. You have your own business. Your career journey is just huge.
It is, and fun. Yeah, it's a lot that I do, but I really enjoy what I do. Sport for me, I think, like all of us, I just got infected by how fun and how emotive watching and taking part in sport can be, and that comes again, I'm assuming, for everybody from a very young age of just kind of getting that sports bug. But I think it was also a source of something that I could argue a lot about. I'm very opinionated. I often think I'm right when 9 times out of 10 I'm not. And I think the beauty of sport is that, when you give your opinions on certain things and certain issues within sport, if you're like I am, you think you're right. There's not actually very rarely a right answer. Sometimes, things that you think are true aren't actually quite true. And I think sport is one of those random things in life that keeps you on your toes and it's very unpredictable. And I love that about sport. And that's one of the main reasons why I kind of fell in love with sport. It's a source of arguing for me. I like arguing, but also I like the unpredictable nature of what sport can bring.
Susie, I feel you and I have had similar career paths in the sense that we started out doing something different in the very beginning, and now we are working in our dream roles. Because when I was doing my prep about you, I mean, you've worked as a subby, you've worked as a digital designer, you've worked as an artist. You started out in PR like me, PR and communications, working as a campaigns and comms officer. What made you decide that you wanted to be a sports writer?
We go back even further than that, and my degree is actually in architecture, so it's been a really, really strange journalism, but I think one that was, like there were always it could have gone that way. Always Arsenal from when I was a little. Would go to the parade, the 98 double parade, the Invincible parade, go to games, would watch Arsenal ladies train opposite my flats when I was, like kind of 4, 5, 6 years old. Always been around sport. Read the back pages, I'd pick up the Mirror for my dad on Sunday mornings, bring it home. I would read the sports pages, but never ever considered that as being a job that people could do or would do, if that makes sense. It just never crossed my mind that was an option for me. So I kind of went off on this architecturally and design career path, and then just the love of sport, I suppose, back around to this point I am at now. But I was writing for fanzines as young, and always had a keen interest in sports writing, that kind of thing. But it just occurred to me that it was a job that people did, even though I read work of people that did it, if that makes sense, in a weird way.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it? Listen to all three of you about the different ways that you've worked your way, if you like, into sports media. Because as I said, I started out in public relations. I go even further back than that, and I did civil service. Oh goodness me, I worked as a hospital radio DJ like Marc did, all these different things, and it's sort of, I see it as a jigsaw. These different things that I did earlier in my life has built a picture of what I wanted to be and what I wanted to do, and those skills I learned all those years ago and all those jobs that I did now apply to how I work today, which brings me on to my next topic, really, about all the different careers and professions that are available in sports media, because there is so many out there, and I'm not sure young people are aware of it. So let's start with you, Susie. I mean, you don't necessarily have to be a sports writer, do you? Because there are so many other jobs out there.
There are, and a lot of the kind of behind the scenes jobs are a lot of fun. Really, when I started working at the Guardian, I was doing page layout. I was a layout sub-editor and doing a little bit of sub-editing as well. But I absolutely loved designing pages, designing the print pages of the paper every day. It's a great job. You work across every single sport. You get to know the writers. You get to know. You sit in between everything at the hub, and you make it look pretty and attractive. I really enjoyed that. And then, in a newsroom, you've got the sub-editors, the layout sub-editors, the web editors. We have revised editors at the Guardian, which are sort of senior sub-editors. Have various reporters at different levels, and there are so many different aspects you can go into. Social media for big papers and broadcasters as well. Hugely important job. Video for newspapers as well as broadcasters is increasing. So yeah, there's a whole host of jobs you can get into, and I always found it really important to have early on to have my finger in as many pies as possible. So stage when I was working 5 days a week doing digital design, not on Sunday Times, then on the weekends working the Observer shift at the Guardian on Saturday, and then doing a evening course 2 weeks, 3 hours. That's 3 hours on a Tuesday and 3 hours on a Thursday evening, learning motion graphics, just to keep my finger in as many different pies as possible. That was about the time when the Guardian asked if I'd be up for writing a regular column, because I'd been writing sort of freelance elsewhere for a while, and they had been alerted to it. And so I always I wanted to write, but sport was where I wanted to be, and there were so many different ways that I could kind of delve into it. So I kind of kept the design. They wanted to train me to edit. I kept that going. I kept expanding that in the design field as well, and then just sort of would pursue all of them, and whichever took off to a certain extent is the one I would a little bit more fervently for a little bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, it does. I mean, Mark, for you, somebody who talks about multimedia, but also you work as a football reporter and a football commentator as well. How much of explosion have you seen of opportunity have you seen for multimedia work in sports media?
Oh, huge. I mean, you only have to go to any sort of football or rugby match or tennis or cricket or whatever at any level now these days. And you're not just looking at us people in the press box doing our radio reports or our TV reports or our written reports. You're now looking around you at multi camera operations requiring people to produce content and operate the technical side of that. You need producers to think what's going in the show to support the presentation talent. And then this big explosion in growth for me has been in that what club media area, where clubs have now realized that they have, if you like, as much power, if not more, than some of the rights holders and everybody. So the amount of jobs that are being created by the clubs, the leagues, the people who run the sports to do all sorts of content, from writing match day programs to running their social media. And that's where I see the real growth in the next few years, even in these difficult times, is there's a lot of opportunity being made within the sports themselves, and also to support the talent and the athletes in their social media presence.
That's a really good point you've just actually made about the growth in terms of multimedia, because 5, 10 years ago, it wouldn't have been something that we'd have thought about associating with sport. But now that you're seeing players and athletes actually producing their own content as well, there's an opportunity for a young person to get involved in that, wouldn't you say, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to think of these athletes now and the clubs and the leagues as being broadcasters, as being media outlets, just as much as they are the people that make and do the sport. But what they all need is they need people behind them with knowledge, expertise, creative ideas to shape that into proper content. You can tell the bad content that is probably individually made by an athlete, as opposed to the professional content that is made by the more elite athletes. There's a team of producers and creatives behind them, and that's where the job opportunities are in the next few years.
Jordan, let's talk about radio, a medium that's very close to my heart and very close to yours as well. Talk about the different opportunities for a young person if they wanted to work in radio, because it's not necessarily in front of the mic, is it?
No, not at all. Not at all. So we both work primarily on mic, but the opportunities behind the mic are vast as well. You know, there's producer opportunities whereby I actually feel like in TV and in radio, the producer is actually more important than the actual presenter, because the producer is the person that drives the show. The producer is the person that shapes and crafts what we're going to talk about on today's show. So I know a lot of people want the glamour of being the person on screen or on mic, you're the person that's seen and heard. But really, to some degree, we're just kind of the puppets, the people that really are controlling what we say, direction we go down. To a large extent, are the people who are in our ear, who are directing where we're going to go, what questions we're going to ask, what guests we're going to book. So I often find, and I'm finding more and more, that the role of a producer is actually more interesting than the role of presenter, because that person has a much more hands-on and a more kind of cerebral perspective of where the show is going to be going. So I think more and more people are learning that as well. I think there's roles you can do with Mark mentions there multimedia. So even if you're not the person again on mic or on camera, the amount of people that have teams with them now that film content. So even if it's not necessarily to do with the show per se, if I'm an athlete or if I'm a presenter or whatever, I might have my own separate independent channel that my own team of shooters and editors are creating content for as well. So not only have I featured content on TalkSport or Five Live or wherever, I've actually now got some stuff that's personal. I've got some extra content that my team has shot on my own external channel as well. So you can be one of those videographers too. You can also be the person that's a researcher. I've got one for my team as well. So research, I think, is very, very important in this era of fake news that Mr. Trump would have us believe. I think the need for factual information has never been more prevalent. And having one person whose designated role is to find the kind of nooks and crannies and the facts of a story or where you want to go in a particular show, I think is an important role behind the scenes as well. So there are plenty of roles. I'm trying to think off the top of my head now: researcher, producer, videographer, editors, people that
Podcast, I was
edit.
going to say, what about podcast
Yeah,
editors as well?
podcast is probably the biggest medium that's exploded in the last kind of 10 years. I think I did read an article about 2 or 3 years ago that said the biggest explosion in any area of business since the last credit crunch from 2008 has been the explosion of podcasts. The podcast industry is so lucrative, and it's for people that maybe don't want to be on screen. Not everyone wants to be on screen. Some people want to have their views heard and want to present, but they don't want to necessarily be seen. And I think the podcast is a very kind of happy medium between television and radio itself, and it's easy to do. You can literally start a podcast in an hour. Just do a tutorial, have a laptop, have a phone, and you're good to go. So there are so many roles that kind of come with radio / podcasting that aren't just on the mic, as you mentioned, behind the mic and off the mic as well.
Do you know what's fascinating about all four of us is that we've all got fingers in different pies. So Marc, for example, working at University of Northampton, but also working for 5 Live, doing his reporting. Susie, the fact that you're a digital designer and you've been a subby as well, and you're still doing your sports writing. Jordan, for you, very much about audio and TV, and the same for me as well. Is that the way that we think that sports media is going, that you don't necessarily have to focus on one thing within sports media? You can work as a photographer, videographer you wanted, and also be a podcast editor, Marc?
I think certainly as you're developing your early career in sports media, you do have to be the jack of all trades, hopefully master of one at least, and you find your niche and you find the one that you like. But yeah, the sort of jobs that come up, entry level into club media, entry level into radio stations, early development of podcasting, writing, you will not get away anymore like perhaps I did at the start of my career with just being a designated radio reporter and somebody else was going to do telly and somebody else was going to do the writing. You have to provide content of all types because the audience choose where they want to consume your content. You don't get to dictate it anymore. Some people would rather watch you on Instagram than listen to you on a medium wave radio. So you have to be in those spaces and you then have to learn the skills and be decently proficient enough in those technologies to be able to deliver the good stuff that you're doing. And, it's absolutely right that you should get a grasp of those skills, as many of them as you can. And, Susie going off and doing courses in digital design and graphic design and doing writing at the same time. That's another classic example of how you've had to sort of diversify your technical skills portfolio to get above anybody else in that job.
I think it's a really good question, Emery. Sorry, just to add of what Marc said, I think, because I personally am a man that respects an expertise. So I'm a kind of person that likes when someone is really good at that one thing. I'm not the sort of person that likes people that are kind of good at everything, jack of all trades, as Marc says. However, I think in the current where we are in terms of media now, you kind of have to have your fingers in multi. You have to be able to edit, present, research, produce, everything. You've got to be able to do everything to a certain standard. And also, I think as we go through the situation regarding the lockdown and the amount of money that's going to be not only lost, but I think companies are going to be tightening their belts, broadcasters and broadcasting outlets, in terms of employing camera operators, presenters, producers. I think now more than any time is a time when I say to young people, get your skills up across a multitude of different areas, because if you can say to a Sky or a BBC or a TalkSport or a 5 Live, yeah, I can edit, yeah, I can present, yeah, I can produce, I can design, I can write, I can do all of these things, you're only making yourself more employable. So while it may feel like more work because you're doing essentially 4, 5, 6, 7 jobs in a way that 20 years ago you were just a camera person or you were just a writer, it feels like more work. But I think if you get it right, you actually bring in more work because you now can charge more, because you can say, look, I can do the whole job for you, rather than you paying 5 people to do 5 jobs. Just give me all the money and I will do it all myself. So I think while I'm someone that respects a specialist trade, I also understand that nowadays, unless you are amazing at that one thing, You have to be brilliant at that one thing to be employed on that one thing. And if you're not in that kind of 1% bracket, you have to be able to diversify in terms of skill sets in multimedia.
I think that's really important.
I was going to say, I was going to bring you, Susie, from a newspaper perspective, we are seeing a lot more journalists now, not necessarily just writing columns and match reports. They're actually doing live match reports on the whistle through their using their mobile phones.
Yeah, I think it's really, really important that we remember that not that we remember that we're realistic about the industry and where it's at, because we all love us and we all think we've got the best job in the world, and we want to see more people get into it, and we can see opportunities that are there for people to get into it, but at the same time we're painfully aware of is in this industry at the same time, in that obviously before coronavirus, all news outlets, be it or paper or broadcast, were all struggling with how you make money producing news and content when you've got Facebook and Google sweeping up on advertising. Every single outlet has struggled with that issue, and now you've got coronavirus and the lockdown on top of that, putting even more pressure on industry finances. So this industry are difficult to get into. So in a sense, having a specialism and having a niche is really important, because and finding an area that is undercovered, like women was a couple of years ago, and recognizing that is going to be an area that is have to grow despite the sort of downturn in jobs within the industry. That's a really good thing to do. But yeah, having a multitude of skills, being able to go to a ground, write a match report, and speak about that outside the grounds. I mean, I think it's when The Athletic popped up that they went after the writers with huge social media followings, as well as being incredibly talented journalists in their own right. They went people who have a very good following across a multitude of platforms, not just specifically for the organisation that they work. If you've got a journalist that is able to kind of tweet out a video to 300 people and then write an on the whistle match report or do an in-depth interview, all of those are really, because that helps your organisation's profile grow as a result, even if it's on their own social channels or whatever it may be. So yeah, it's hugely important for people to have as wide a range of skills as possible, because it is a difficult industry to get into. It also helps you get your foot in the opening that is available to you. When I came in, I applied for a sub-editor job at The Guardian. I didn't get it. I asked shifts. They said, we really liked your layout. Do you want to come and do some layout shifts? Now, if I was just a sub-editor and going for sub-editing jobs, I didn't get a job. I took with me a portfolio of design work, of written work, of editing work. They offered me on something that I hadn't applied for. I wanted that more than I wanted to be a sub-editor, but I was just for absolutely everything that I could, in the hope that one of them just got my foot in the door. So, like, if you have a diverse skill set, you're going to be able to apply for more opportunities when they become available, and pitch yourself around more, purely because more people are, you're applying for a much wider range of jobs that are out there. If one takes off, but you want to be in a particular a different area, you start off as an editor and you want to be in broad, just getting your foot in the door for that first time makes such a huge difference. In one little bit of experience on your CV that is paid experience in this industry really, really matters. So if you can get your foot in the door in a way necessarily your first choice, is super important. Like when I was editing and doing layout, now I'm writing full time. That's within a 3.5 year period. You're not going to apply for your dream job and get it. You're not going to be a senior sports writer for the BBC or for a national newspaper, or a senior reporter at Sky, just by applying for it. You've got to start low, find a way in the door, and then chart your path, like find a path to where you want to be, and try and kind of engineer your route to it, basically. It's a maze.
Let's talk about that maze then, because that's a lovely segue into the next thing I want to discuss with you guys, is about after graduation for students. Once they've got that sports media degree, whatever shape or form that takes, I get the feeling sometimes when I've spoken to students when they've left university, and they say, oh, I can't, I've only left 6 months ago and I can't get a job at Sky or BBC or somewhere else. And Mark, I'd like to come to you about this one. Do we need to manage expectation a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, what I always say to my students who join my course is, we will teach you to the best of our ability and we will make you match fit for the industry. But what the industry needs to see is that you want it more than anybody else. And you can have a piece of paper from our university, but what proves you're a good student on a multimedia sports journalism course is the same thing that proves you're a good person to have in the workplace. And that's going for the opportunities that lie in front of you from day one. Anybody who goes for any sort of sports news qualification or sports media qualification, does the qualification and then walks out and thinks the doors are already open, haven't, in my view, taken the opportunities that landed before. And you can only get better on that degree or whatever qualification it is. And you can only get better in job opportunities if you take voluntary work at your own local non-league football club or your local netball club or something like that, and you're looking to always have a go at it. So personally, from what we try to do at Northampton is, yeah, of course, we'll teach you informal lessons, but every one of you is out there writing for the Northampton Town Academy team or the Saints rugby team or doing stuff from day one. And that is the difference. That's the stuff that stands out on the CV the most. So if you want to navigate the maze and you want to get ahead of everybody else, it's purely and simply showing that you have got the aptitude and the desire to do sport and cover sport, even if it's a sport that you perhaps don't like.
I actually agree. Sorry with that. If I can just add on to the back of that one, I agree completely. I don't really have any sympathy for students that come out of university and don't get their dream job in the first 6 months. I'm sorry. I tell you why. Because sports media is one of the few industries where you don't have to wait, especially in these days, you don't have to wait to be commissioned or published. It's not like it's a profession whereby in medicine or in law, where there's a process and there's a time where to get up the ranks and to get the job you want, you just have to just churn away and wait until you're almost kind of given a cosign by a particular firm or a particular hospital. If you want to write, just write. If you want to be a videographer, just go to a Sunday League game as mentioned and film it. If you want to be a photographer, we've all got some of the cameras on our phones are better than actual cameras. There isn't any excuse anymore. So I don't really have an excuse for students that, say, oh, I want to be a journalist or I want to be a videographer, but I can't get a job at Sky. Well, I'm sorry, but you don't have to wait for Sky to take pictures. Sky, that job will come if you're good and you're persistent. But in the meantime, just go to your local park. Be creative. You don't need to wait for anything or anyone to be able to really build up that bank of experience and skill sets that maybe in a year's time when a job does come up at a Sky or a BBC or a Guardian or a TalkSport, now you're a bit more equipped for that job because you've had a year's work under your belt, filming or writing about, as Marc mentioned, a sport that maybe you didn't love, but it shows willing and it shows intent and it shows initiative. So when I do a lot of talks, I speak to young people that are like, oh, I left uni a year ago, 6 months ago, and I can't get a job at BBC. I'm like, why are you waiting for the BBC? Just get your phone, get a pen and paper, go out and write, go out and take pictures, set up a blog, set up a YouTube channel, set up a podcast. You don't have to wait anymore in a way that when we all came through, there wasn't this YouTube thing, there wasn't this podcast thing coming out. You got it easy now. These people have got it so much easier now. So I have very little sympathy, if any at all, when I hear young people talk about not getting their dream job very early. I'm sorry, no sympathy at all. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I was as you were talking, I was reminiscing about when after I left university, it took a bit of time. I got a job in TV production and I worked as a runner. And I remember for the first few months of working a runner, I was literally buying teas and coffees for the staff and booking guests, sorting out taxis, getting lunches, photocopying, filing, doing database work. And that was for a good year before I was even allowed to take that step up and become a junior researcher. I had to really, really graft in that first year. And I also was told by my very good university lecturer, told us all to start building our network from the second year when we were at university. And we're all thinking, we've got 2 years yet before we graduate and go and find jobs. And he was saying, you need to start building your network now. Start trying to go for coffees for people, start identifying companies you want to work for, and look at the job applications and see how you can develop yourself as a person and your skills to apply for those jobs. Because at my uni, they were very clear that you cannot expect to walk into a job straight away the minute that you graduate as well. I mean, Susie, building a network, how important is that as a sports writer?
Absolutely critical, not just for your stories, for, like you just said, get jobs as well. I mean, every freelance opportunity I've had in the past 4 years has come through networking. Even when it's been, I actually end up applying for a job, it's someone ringing me up and saying, there's this job, we want you to apply for it, that has kind of put it on my radar, so to speak. It's like, you cannot underestimate the importance of having a strong contact book. I agree with all of the previous points as well. I mean, the thing that frustrates me is, like a lot of industries, you can't journalism and expect to get an interview. And that can be quite demoralizing, because that's almost what a lot of students come out of university expecting, that I've got my degree now. I've got a little portfolio of work from having done my degree, and I will go out and I will apply for all of these jobs, and then I don't hear back from 30, 40, 50 applications, and that demoralizes me and I move away from the industry. It's accepting very early on that you're not going to get a job that way is going to make you move far in this industry. You need to be producing content independently yourself. You need to be finding stories that you can pitch, be asking for shifts, because 9 times out of 10, when a job comes up at Sky or the BBC or Channel 4 or the Guardian or the Times, 9 times out of 10, whatever job is being advertised will be being applied to by people being freelancing for those companies already. And that was the most important piece of advice that I had. Even when I'm applying for jobs, if I don't get a reply, to ask for shifts for those jobs, ask for shifts, and whether there was any availability or opportunities at any of the places that I apply for. Because 9 times out of 10, the Guardian, for example, if I apply for a sub-editor job at the Guardian, got a lot of freelancers working on that subs desk, and a lot of those will be waiting for the opportunity to apply for a full-time position. They're already doing the job, they've proven themselves, they already have the experience, they already know everyone there, they know the system, they're going to apply, and the likelihood of the Guardian going, I want to reward this person that's grafted for me on a freelance basis for so long, is very, very high. So if you're a new person coming into that, you'll be able to compete with them. But if you're one of the people who have got your foot in the door and have started freelancing there, your chances are then going up. So you've got to be asking for freelance opportunities, and the only way to do that network. And if you meet as many people as possible. When I decided that sports journalism was what I wanted to be in, I joined the Football Writers Association, I joined the Sports Journalists Association, I joined Women in Football, Women in Sport, Women in Journalism. I went to London Press Club events. I went to any I could find about women in journalism or sports journalism, in sports journalism. And I went to those events and I made myself. I'm from a council estate in Hackney, and I went to an ex-poly. It's not natural for me to go chat to people and introduce myself, but I forced myself to go at all of those events. I speak to, identify and speak to the people most related to the industry and the area of the industry that I wanted to be in. And that, for me, was the most fruitful thing I could have done. And I managed to carve out most of the things that I did in that way. I wouldn't go up and I'm looking for work. How do I get into work at your company, I would listen to someone on the panel who was about breaking the glass ceiling for women, to them about opportunities for working class young people in the industry. Or I would, I would have an interview for a job the next day, and I would ask for some advice ahead of that interview. I'd ask if I could stay in, and if they'd be willing to read a couple of my articles or something like that. And yeah, I think for me that's really important, is that you don't, when you are networking, that you don't just kind of act desperate for a job, as hard as it may seem. Everyone knows you want a job. Everyone knows that's why you're there and that's why you're talking to them. But find a way to get on another level, on a kind of a deeper level.
Super quickly, just to kind of, Susie mentioned earlier on about the importance of building networks, which is in journalism, it's so important. But alongside that as well, it's about access to the right people. So I've been doing this 22 years now. Do you think 10 years ago I could email a Susie Rack at The Guardian about, can you read my article? We've got Twitter, we've got Instagram. Susie Rack's emails out there now. I could never get a hold of someone like Susie 10, 15 years ago. You mad? Now, if you're a student coming out of degree or whatever, you can email all these people. Anne-Marie, come on. So
I know. I was going to say, and Mark, from your point of view, 10 years, as Jordan's just pointed out, 10 years ago, you wouldn't be able to find Susie Rack on Twitter or any other. So sorry to use you as an example, Susie, but you wouldn't be able to find her on social media, let you get in contact with her. But you can do that now. And that is a massive opportunity that should be hammered several times over.
In my day, you picked up the phone, tried to get through to the Guardian sports desk, asked for Susie Rack, and she'd have the police on you for stalking you. Absolutely, the door is now open.
You still might now, actually.
Yeah, but still might now. Yeah, absolutely. But absolutely, the door is open to all of us now. I'm on Twitter. We're all on Twitter, and yeah, I mean, we've got busy lives and we've got things to do. But I think, certainly one of the reasons I'm stranded in this dual life, if you like, of academia and practicing sports journalism is, quite frankly, I've had a great life out of this, and long may that continue. But I've always wanted to try and help the next generation have the life that I've had and the opportunities I have, because, you work hard, but it's certainly, a great job to be involved in and a great experience. So you must reach out. You absolutely say to anybody, don't be afraid, don't be shy, reach out. I don't think I'm going to say no to anybody who contacts me on Twitter for a bit of advice. It might take me a while to get through all of those answers, so I might not answer you for a couple of weeks, but ask us questions, ask us how this happens. But what I would say about that, interestingly as well, is I have some people who do that, and they instantly expect me to say, well, once you've done your degree, like everybody's talked about here, once you've done your degree, you can go off to Sky, and then that's it. That's brilliant. It isn't about that. It's about planning, if you like. Imagine it as a mountain. You can't walk straight up a high mountain. You have to go around the bendy roads to get right to the top. And it's about plotting your path on the bendy road and which parts you want to take and how that route goes to get you to the summit that you want to get to.
Yeah, excellent points. Finally, can I ask all three of you, actually, and I'll chip in as well, about extracurricular activities outside of studying at college or university or even a work life? How important is that to young people if they want to work in sports media? Because the thing I've been picking up over the last few webinars I've been doing is that you don't necessarily have to play for a sports team to view that as an extracurricular activities. It's things like reading, listening to podcasts, going to networking meetings, things like that. Let's start with you, Jordan. What would you say is extracurricular activities for somebody who wants to work in sports media?
I think the three main ones you just named. I think reading and consuming as much, articles and books on the subject of interest within sport as possible. Listening to podcasts. I listened to about, I think, 22 podcasts I counted. I think half of them are sport. So we're just kind of getting a different perspective on different people about how they saw last night's game between Manchester City and Arsenal, or the up and coming US Open, and just kind of getting that real difference of perspectives from different people. But I think the other one you mentioned as well is an important one too. Just getting out there to as many conferences and events as possible. Put yourself out there, meet new people. There are so many conferences and events and shenanigans going on where you can meet like-minded sports buffs. It doesn't have to be for the people you work for, work with, but just put yourself out there and consume as much as possible, because it can't make you worse. It can only make you better. It can only really improve your knowledge on the particular sport or area of broadcasting or journalism that you want to work in. But it actually might also enhance your interest in that sort of thing, because you might come across, might read or hear a different perspective that really gives you an idea, a bit of a nugget to, okay, you know what, I might write an article about that, or I might do a podcast on this. I consume and consume and consume. And I block out the things and the people that don't benefit my professional kind of movements, and the ones that do, I embrace. So if you're a writer, consume as much of everything else that kind of has sport on it as possible, because it can only make you a better writer. If you're a presenter, producer, researcher, graphic designer, whatever it is you do within sport, just consume, consume, consume.
Such a good point, Jordan, about consuming as well. Because I remember a young person contacted me on Twitter about he wanted to work for a football club and he wanted to work in the sports business side of things. And he was asking me what he should do outside of, just watching football matches. And I was talking about, well, reading for starters is a good one, and target journalists who cover stories, particularly about sports business. So at the moment, we've got discussions about the Newcastle takeover. That is a great story at the moment, and get really under the skin about intricacies that are involved when a new owner wants to, or a new prospective customer wants to come over and take over a club, and all the backwards and forwards and the politics that go all around that, and what is the journalist saying in their style, and who do they write for, and so on and so forth. Susie, is there anything else that you can add to this as well about extra stuff that someone could be doing outside of their degree?
Yeah, I mean, I think upskilling in as many areas as possible based on what we were saying earlier is really, like I say, when I was working on Guardian doing layout and the Times doing design, I was doing a motion graphics course with the idea that then that would open up jobs to me, not front of camera, not producer, but doing like the kind of team graphics that pop up on Sky and that kind of stuff. And so I went and did a 12-week, quite decent evening course on that. Spend a lot of money to upskill yourself. You can watch YouTube videos on kind of how to use Adobe Premiere or Photoshop. You can get free trials of these. I also think it's really, really important to know about, if you're wanting to be a writer like I am, for example, to know about the roles that interact with you, and the different jobs that people have that you're going to in day-to-day basis. I think I benefited hugely from having worked on the desk and watched the editors, the football editors, the features editors, all up closely and interacting with them from a design point of view. Go into writing for publication was hugely useful, because it meant that I know exactly what's going on when and they need copy, and a writer hasn't filed on time, or that a writer has filed 300 words over or 300 words under, or what that means for the editor, what that means for the page of the paper you're laying out, how you have to read it, what for the editor who is having to find a different picture to fit a shape because it's changed, what that means for the cost of if that page is late going to print, that it's like 800 quid a minute for every page that is late by past them to the press, little things like that. So learn about the jobs that exist around you're going to be interacting with and what their job entails, and can I come and sit in and watch what you do a day? Can you talk me through kind of day to day what your biggest frustrations are, that kind of stuff? Speak to people who are going to help you once you're in the role that you want to be in as well, in delivering and working with people in the best possible way, essentially.
And Marc, you and I both worked at hospital radio, volunteering work. How important is voluntary work as well?
Yeah, voluntary work is the way that you can move your career on very quickly. I mean, voluntary work in the discussion we're having goes from everything from hospital radio stations, which still exist, but also, we have thousands of grassroots sports clubs in this country who are having a difficult time just as much as anybody else right now. But at the best of times, they don't get the coverage that they deserve. And they are opening doors, and they would open doors to the right people, the right volunteers, to go and write match reports for their websites, to go and record podcasts about their club, to go and film their highlights. I know that because we get offered those opportunities at the university. Those opportunities exist everywhere in the United Kingdom, that clubs, big and small, want some help. So, don't ever think that your local ice hockey club or your local non-league football club is beyond you because you want to be an Arsenal reporter. The Arsenal reporters would have started one day covering ice hockey because they had to because somebody went sick, or they've covered grassroots football for years before they've gone on to do Arsenal Football Club. So you really do have to look in front of you, and everywhere there is still there is opportunity. So if you want to do one thing today, to advance your career in sports media, look up your local football club, your local rugby club, your local bowls club, and ask them, do they want any help with match reports for their website or filming a bit of video?
I was going to make a quip about being, an Arsenal reporter, but I won't. I will refrain. As a gooner, I won't say anything about it. But it is an excellent point, Mark, about don't necessarily looking at your dream job, looking at something that may be able to help you as voluntary work. You rightly say grassroots, like you rightly say. I'm contacted by grassroots organisations saying they're looking for someone to help them with their social media content for a few weeks, or they're looking for someone to write match reports and get and happy to give an opportunity to somebody. So there is things out there, everyone. There is stuff out there that can help you definitely get on with your sports media journey. Well, I'd love to say thank you very much for watching the Careers in Sports Media webinar. I hope that's given you some ideas and some options as well about how you want to develop your career in this fantastic industry. And I have to say that because I'm slightly biased. But of course, I didn't do this on my own. I have to extend a very warm thank you to Susie Rack, to Jordan Jarrett-Bryan, and also to Marc Webber for joining us on this webinar. How can we all find you? Let's start with you, Susie. How can we find you on social media?
At Susie Rack on Twitter and Instagram. So that's the easiest way to find me. My DM Twitter as well. My email address is in my profile. So yeah, like I say, it's very, very easy to contact people nowadays. I have to help people where I can.
And Jordan, how can we find you on social media?
I'm on Twitter _Jordan J Bryan, and I'm on Instagram. My full name, Jordan Jarrett-Bryan. So hit me up, get in touch.
And Marc, where can we find you on social media?
Pretty similar. At Marc Webber on Twitter. So that's MarcWebber, and I think it's the same on Instagram as well.
Thanks, guys, and thank you for watching the Careers in Sport Media webinar. Of course, you can find me on social media as well. I'm at Batson on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want more information about Careers in Sport, head over to careers-in-sport.co.uk and you can find them across social media as well. Take care, and we'll see you soon.